one.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. Go to emailrevealer.com. You get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can also hire me for all kind of stuff like asset searches and locates, and even an online infidelity search. Also, check out OppermanReport.com. We have a special members section there with all kind of exclusive documents. As a matter of fact, we just put up a document on there. Speaking of our guest today, we put up a document on there last night. A letter from Jeffrey, the convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. We have a letter from his attorneys describing how Jeffrey Epstein, according to them, helped found the Clinton Foundation. How do you like that? Okay, so we got that letter there from Epstein's own attorneys. OppermanReport.com. We got a lot of exclusive content, exclusive shows, and also documents. We got a really special guest, someone I've been looking forward to. He's a retired Secret Service agent, Gary Byrne. His book is Crisis of Character. A White House Secret Service officer discloses his firsthand experience. Wow, what a long title. Okay, his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. What do I call you, Officer Byrne?
Gary's fine.
Gary, okay. Mr. Gary Byrne, tell us about yourself. Who is Gary Byrne?
Well, I'm from the outskirts of Philadelphia. I was raised mostly in Virginia, and I started my career in law enforcement at the U.S. Air Force, and then I went to work for the Secret Service Uniform Division. I was there for 12 years, and then after we were attacked on 9/11, I transferred from the Secret Service PD to the U.S. Air Force.
Okay, so, and then how long did it take you to get into the White House?
Well, when I first went to work for the Secret Service, as soon as I graduated, I worked at the White House. All the uniform division people, the uniform division guys in the Secret Service are the guys that you see in uniform around the outside of the White House, inside the White House, in the West Wing, the mansion, and they have fixed posts. They're also the emergency response teams for the Secret Service, the White House, the Vice President's president. They're also the sniper guys, and they do metal detectors for the President and the Vice President all over the world.
So now, for a uniformed law enforcement officer, that must be like a dream job, right?
It was incredible, and I'm so grateful for it. Although, as I wrote the book, The Crisis of Character, the original title, actually, not many people know this, and I haven't talked about it much. The book was supposed to be more about my life. It is about my life, but it now focuses more on my time with the Clintons. But the original title was called Fence Jumpers to Hijackers. And once I got a publisher, it was funny because they said, we like that title. We see what you're trying to do with it, but we're not going to use it. So anyway, we came up with Crisis of Character. And it's not just about the Clintons' crisis of character. It's also about mine. Coming out and, as we call it in the Secret Service, talking out of school. But I felt compelled to write this book. I started it about a year and a half ago when I discovered Mrs. Clinton was going to try to run for the office of the presidency. I think it's important for the American people to know what the truth is about her, that she's not a leader, that she's somebody who clearly seems to have issues with anger. And quite frankly, all the positive life you've ever seen about her, and supposedly how good of a leader and a politician she is complete hype.
Now, what period of time were you in the White House?
I started in 1991, and I transferred out to the training center in actually, I was at the White House the whole time I was there. I was full-time from 91 to like 98 roughly, and then but even when I was out the training center, I had to come back every weekend cover duty at the White House. So once you get in the uniform division, the White House is you'll basically work yourself to death there. Hopefully you'll retire before you work yourself to death. So.
And that brings up another thing. Now, when you left the Secret Service, you left under good terms. You weren't.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. They love me, and I love the job. And when I talk about the Secret Service in the book, I talk about some negative management style, but that's not about the individual people. Now, clearly, since I've written this book, some people have come out and trashed me, and I understand that. Generally speaking, Secret Service people aren't supposed to write books. But the truth is, agents have written books about their details and about the stuff that they did in the Secret Service for years. The difference is I'm a uniform division officer, and that seems to bother them. And the other thing is the idea that I didn't have access to the information that I write about in my book. Here's the thing. I'm the first. Here's my claim to fame, and I got to tell you, it's nothing I ever wanted to put on my resume, but here it is. I was the first Secret Service uniform division officer to ever be compelled to testify against the president in a criminal case. I was compelled to testify against President Bill Clinton in the Monica Lewinsky scandal 6 times. Eventually, I was ordered to testify by Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist. So the ideal that anything in this book is anything other than the truth is ridiculous. Who would put themselves under this kind of scrutiny if it wasn't true? And a lot of my information in the book is testimony, sworn testimony. So there's no shortage of mainstream media people trashing me, but they've also blacklisted me. So they don't have any problem with people like on TV shows like The View and news reports of trashing me and calling me a liar. But they won't give me the 10 minutes that I need to go on there and tell my side of the story and set the truth right. So I just find it kind of ironic that they're bucking under pressure from Mrs. Clinton's campaign. She's running to be president of the United States, and she's squashing my First Amendment right. And I can't prove it, but it is what they're reporting in the news that's happening. And I believe it's certainly the modus operandi of the Clinton machine.
Okay, well, if you're familiar with the Lewinsky case, then you would also be familiar that you're not the first person to come under harassment and threats and intimidation by the Clinton machine.
Not at all. You're right. It's the wrong list of people.
Yeah, just recently I had Kathleen Woolley on the show. Now, did you know Kathleen Woolley?
You know what? I remember seeing it. I remember when the story broke. I got to tell you, this is one of the ones that really hurts me. That woman, she believed in the Clintons. She was a volunteer for them. She helped them out. She got to the point in her life where she needed a paying job. Her husband was sick. So right. she had enough out there to actually get an appointment with the president. And she goes over there asking for a favor. And what does he do? I told her what she said, and I believe her. He tried to molest her or sexually assault that gropes her. And I find that incredible. And if here's the thing. If Kathleen Woolley told that same story, walked in any police station in the country and told that same story, there'd be a bulletin put out for that person, and they would find them and do an investigation. But it's Bill Clinton. He gets a pass. And then Mrs. Clinton and all the other little Clintonites line up behind them and trash the victim. And it's incredible.
I'm also doing, as a matter of fact, on Saturday, I'm going to be doing a show about Vince Foster, and I have Patrick Knowlton, who was a witness. He discovered the body of Vince Foster in that park over there, and he went through some troubling times after that.
I'm very familiar with the incident.
Okay, so you must be very familiar with what went on in the White House during the days of Vince Foster. Give us a little background. What do you think happened there?
So, before I would glad to tell you anything I know. Before I start, have you ever heard the name of UD Officer Hank O'Neill?
No.
So, if you get a chance, look up Hank O'Neill on C-SPAN and watch his testimony. So here's the story. As soon as Vince Foster's body was found and identified, and the FBI was notified, the first thing they did was they called the Secret Service and asked the Uniform Division to post an officer outside Vince Foster's office in the West Wing in the legal counsel space. So they posted Officer Hank O'Neill. And Hank O'Neill was a good guy, man. I just can't tell you. It's so hard to describe to you the type of officer. This is a guy that had been there a long time. He was the go-to guy. Listen, the chief got a message that a guy out in front of Vince Foster's office. He picked Hank O'Neill. That's the kind of guy he was. So Hank stayed in post there, and shortly after, he gets there, Maggie Williams, somebody who worked with Miss Clinton, shows up. And I'm not anti-Maggie Williams. I had interactions with her. She was a nice person. But I know these things to be factual, and they were wrong. And they tried to get into Vince's office and clear it out. And eventually they badgered Hank so much and forced their way in there. And when he contacted our higher-ups, they said, well, let them in there, but keep track of what they're taking out. So he did. It ended up, again, another Clinton scandal. Poor Vince Foster kills himself, and it turns into this huge scandal because they couldn't follow directions. The Clintons are famous for these big government programs, but they can't follow the simple directions of police officers. They want all these rules and regulations for everybody else, but not themselves. It's one of the themes of my book that there's two standards. There's a standard for me and you, and there's a standard for them. So Hank watches what they take out, and they took out approximately 3 boxes full of stuff. And the investigation gets underway, and they subpoena Hank, and he tells the truth of what he saw. Then he ends up in Congress being ripped apart by the Democrats in Congress, and it was wrong. But I will tell you this about Hank's experiences. What I saw happen to Hank, I knew was going to happen to us when the Lewinsky story broke. So here's just another example of the Clinton machine. They jump from one scandal to the other. And the latest one is the email server. But as far as Vince Foster's death it was sad. It's clearly, this is one thing I will say about him. I didn't know him well. I used to see him around. The first time I saw him, the first thing that popped in my head was, here's a guy that does not want to be here. He looked so uncomfortable and so unhappy. He just didn't look like he wanted to be in his own skin. He looked miserable. And it was sad to watch it happen.
What about allegations of an affair between Hillary and Vince Foster?
I had heard that before, but I have no proof on it. I have heard the same rumor that you had, but I don't really talk about that in my book, just because I don't really have any proof of it. But I had heard it, yeah.
So now you had heard this while you were there working before the suicide.
Oh yeah, and certainly the rumor circulated after his suicide too.
Okay, so and then you're telling me that there's no doubt that items were removed from that office after the office was sealed by Secret Service.
Yes, that's true. If Hank O'Neill said it happened, it happened. Like I said, if you get a chance to watch his C-SPAN testimony, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, I'll look it up and we'll attach it to this interview. Now, isn't that in itself a crime? There's a probate, and when there's a bot, right?
When it comes to these guys, nothing seems to be a crime. One of the other things I talk about in my book, Crisis of Character, is how the Clintons tried to turn the FBI into their own private detective agency. And one of the FBI had a liaison that worked in the White House complex. His last name was Aldrich. And I didn't know him real well, but I knew him, well enough to say hi to him. And we passed the time once in a while, like, hi, how you doing? On West Executive Avenue, or a couple times outside my post, outside the Oval Office. And he told me one time, and I heard it from some superiors, actually, that he interacted with, and some other officers, that he was complaining about the Clintons thought the FBI was their private investigation service. They were asking for all these files. And he kept telling them, you can't do that. And as soon as he would put any pressure on them to say, look, we can't do that, they would go over his head, contact somebody at FBI headquarters, and then they'd badger him into doing it. And eventually it became another scandal, the Filegate scandal. And again, they just going to jump from one scandal to the other. And anybody who believes that a Hillary Clinton administration will be any different, all they have to do is go back a day and a half to what the FBI director just told us about the email scandal. Sir.
Yeah, there's live, as we tape the show, there's live hearings going on right now in Congress, and they have Director Comey sitting there. And I tell you, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch this today. I apologize for taking you away from it if you wanted to watch it.
No, it's fine. Yeah. No, it's good.
But it's really I got to tell you, man. I got to tell you, I've been involved I was involved in a congressional hearing as well. I cannot imagine this is going to turn out well either for Comey or for Clinton. But back to Foster. Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, it won't let.
Are you there?
Yeah, are you there?
Yeah, you're breaking up just a little bit. Whatever you were doing before when you were really close to the phone,
How
it was
about
good.
that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
So everything that they get involved in seems to roll off their back. So look at last weekend or a couple of days ago, whenever it was, when the Attorney General is in an airport in Phoenix, Arizona,
right.
and all of a sudden, Bill Clinton shows up. Just by accident. But that was no accident. He's a former president of the United States. He's got lots of friends inside all these agencies. He knew where she was going to be. This is what I refer to as the soft intimidation. He purposely scheduled that, went there, and to remind her, I wasn't on the plane, but this is my experience that I talk about in Persons of Character. And I'll give you an example of where I saw him do this to a UD officer. Soft intimidation, where he shows up, and he wanted her to remember how she got her start, that he appointed her as a judge years ago. And who knows what they talked about, but the fact that they were together for half an hour, and they're both claiming they were talking about the grandchildren, is pure hogwash, in my opinion. And why were they so adamant to keep the agents that were putting them away? Because they were doing something wrong. And I'm not accusing the Attorney General of doing anything wrong, but I'm telling you, whatever took place there, the optics are horrendous. Now, and a good example of when I talk about this soft intimidation, during the time that myself and these other officers and some junior agents, and one thing you have to understand about the Lewinsky investigation, the Secret Service executives at the time, the director and all those people, deputy directors underneath them, they could have testified. They had the information the 10-star one. But to save their careers, they pushed us forward. The uniformed guys that were posts in and around the White House and the West Wing, some young, and one executive who was on the protected detail, but wasn't even on the protected detail when all this took place. They did it to protect themselves. So one of the things you have to realize is that when we were forced to testify, nobody ever wanted to talk about this. But, when the Justice Department and the Supreme Court tell you to testify, you either do it or you go to jail. I mean, one of the things that Mrs. Clinton's hallmark whenever she testifies in these scandals is they get away with, and the president, they get away with, I don't remember, I don't recall, I don't remember. Well, how is it they can be so smart that they can't remember these things, or so intelligent, or so good at their jobs? If a uniform division officer or a Secret Service agent, we were told flat out, if you can't remember or can't recall, and we can prove you're lying, you're going to jail. And I believe them.
Well, already in today's hearings, they've pretty much demonstrated that she did perjure herself before Congress when she was talking about no classified emails and things like that. Now, a couple of questions for you. In your experience as a Secret Service agent, this idea of when Clinton's meeting with Lynch, that they're telling the press that they're not allowed to take pictures and report on this. Have you seen that before?
Yeah, sure. They don't want any. They don't want any information, that it took place. They don't want to be able to prove. They want that plausible deniability. Oh, that's just rumor. Well, it's fact, and we know it happened. And yes, there are examples of that in my book, Persons of Character.
Can you give us another example of that? And wouldn't that be an indication that there was something nefarious going on at this meeting?
Yeah, I think there was. I mean, who really knows? But again, the optics are horrendous. Here's an example for you that I talk about in my book. One of the first times I ever saw this, and I only saw it during the Clinton administration, was, the uniform division does the metal detectors for a president, the first family, when they go into these, like they go to let's say they come to your state and they're going to talk at the convention center. So we do all the security and the metal detector.
Sure.
So we were doing this particular event, and the President Clinton was running late as usual, about an hour late, and the arena was just about full. But one of the administration things, they always wanted to get as many people in there as they could, so they could make him look like the most popular president ever. And they talked about this too. So just about the time before he comes on, some staffer walks up to me and says, "Hey, shut the metal detectors off." And I looked at her like she was crazy. And they're like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Shut the metal detectors off." I said, "That don't work for you. Get away from me." So a little while later, she comes back and she's telling the sergeant to shut the metal detectors off. She's yelling at him. And the guy looks at me like, she's crazy. And so eventually an agent comes over and says, "They want you to shut the metal detectors down." And I said, "Well, I'm not doing it. You guys can do whatever you want. I'm not shutting down the metal detector." So I kept screening people. They were discussing it back and forth. And finally, the sergeant came over and said, shut it down. I walked over to the agent and said, give me a name. And he said, what? I said, I want a name of somebody in the Secret Service who's telling you it's okay to turn these metal detectors off. And he goes, well, it's not that big of a deal because anybody that walks in there now, they'll be at the back of the crowd. And then almost fell on the floor. I'm like, oh, so nobody's smart enough to weave their way in with a handgun that slips in and get up to the stage? So he gave me a name and I wrote it down. And so sometime later when we got back and we wrote reports on this and complained about it, they all tried to deny. Oh, no, we didn't say that. We didn't do this. When it got up to the shift leaders, the guys that run the president's detail, the assistant director for protective operations, and the special agent in charge, they knew nothing about it, and they were appalled. But again, nobody, everybody denied it. Oh, it never happened. I misinterpreted what they said. It was BS. We know what they wanted to do, and it was ridiculous. And that's an example of the Clinton machine putting their own lives at risk.
Yeah, I've actually covered the Clintons, Hillary, when she did her rallies here, and I've been through those metal detectors. I've done that. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of funny, too, real quick, is when I left early, I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the screeching. And when I left early, the guys in the uniform at metal detectors, they says, hey, you can't come back in. And I says, I don't want to. And they all left. So,
yeah.
So, it's got to be the same thing. So now, she was unliked by her security staff, correct?
Yeah, well, she treated the Secret Service and the staff members in the military that worked there terribly. Here's just a story I like to tell people, and this kind of an idea of why I get so aggravated, about her behavior. One time when she was walking down the West Colonnade on the way over to the West Wing, and one of my coworkers, he's been on the job about a year and a half, he's walking toward her. He's the First Lady, and she's walking with a staff member. He looks her in the eye and says, good morning, First Lady. And she looked at him and said, go F yourself. Now, here's the thing about that. It's incredibly rude. It's wrong. And it's true. But here's the thing. 3 or 4 years before that, that guy was in the Army. He won a Purple Heart for an injury that he sustained early in the missions to Somalia. And then 3 or 4 years later, he's working for the Secret Service, still protecting his country and its leaders. And the First Lady of the guy who sent him to Somalia, where he got his Purple Heart, tells him to go after himself. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. If you walked into your dentist's office and you saw your dentist treating his employees like that, you would run out of there like it was on fire. It's just insane. And I have many stories like this that detailed in my book, Crisis of Character.
Crisis of Character. I'd like to back up a little bit back to Vince Foster for a second. One of the elements of that story is that when he left the White House to go commit suicide, he never signed out of the White House. Now that's pretty much one of your jobs over there, right? Is that possible?
Yeah. So here's the deal. I don't know exactly what they're talking about because they're using terminology like that's lawyer terminology. When you enter the White House, you have a pass around your neck, and the Secret Service people had them too, and they were different colors. Now ours were blue, which allowed us anywhere, and then we had a special mark on there that told anybody else that you were a gun carrier. For instance, the FBI agent Aldridge that worked in the White House complex, his pass had that little mark on it that let us know that he was a gun carrier. And anyway, although Aldridge didn't carry the gun all around the complex, but under certain circumstances he could. But so Vince had a West Wing pass. It was blue and would have had a W on it. And when you come in, you show it to the officer. And in some cases, at some posts, you actually swiped it. It had a chip in it, and then it recorded information. Now, when Vince left, he didn't necessarily have to swipe it. He could have walked out a vehicle gate that was open, or just walked out a gate that wasn't, where the officer just opened it for him. And the truth is, if anybody recognized him as being a senior staff member, they might have just opened the gate for him and let him out.
Okay, so you don't find anything odd or suspicious about that, then?
Not in that context, but again, I don't see the whole picture with this particular incident.
Just recently, it's been revealed. You're familiar with the story about Jeffrey Epstein, right?
About the Clinton Foundation.
Well, not just about the Clinton Foundation, but the fact that Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's. This guy's a convicted pedophile, and he flew on his plane 26 times, which is double what we previously thought. But now it came out that 4 of those times he had to sign a waiver saying, "I don't want Secret Service protection with me." Are you familiar with that?
Right. Yes, I'm very familiar with that process. It's called signing off. And I know other protectees have done it for certain reasons. You don't want the protection, you have to sign off on it. You have to sign a legal document saying that you and or the law, Congress, can't hold them responsible. You walk away from your protection. And yes, I'm familiar with that process.
And all the times you were dealing with Clinton when he was president, did he ever do that?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And your experience as a Secret Service agent, have you personally experienced someone doing that and signing off?
Actually, I don't. I can't recall that, but I do have an incident where Mrs. Clinton tried to ditch her protection because she was so angry about something and walk off the complex.
Amazing. Just amazing. Was this like the Beverly Hillbillies over there?
Well, it's funny you should say that, but I remember when they first got elected, somebody had some political cartoonist drew a picture of the president and Hillary in a pickup truck with looked like it was right off a hee-haw, coming to Washington, and they're coming to the White House, and the officer and the agent stand out in front of the White House. The caption was, "Here we go again," and I guess they were referring to President
Jimmy Carter, yeah,
who did Georgia. So.
Now, in your experience, your expertise, what would be a reason why Clinton would sign off on Secret Service protection in order to fly on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted pedophile?
Because he didn't want the agents to see what he was doing. Because in his experience, he already had gone through getting caught with Lewinsky, and we were forced to testify against him. And he realizes that if he gets caught doing something wrong, that they can end up testifying against him. And that's the only reason I can think of.
There could be no other harmless?
Sure there could be. Sure there could be another reason. But based on what we know about Bill Clinton the last 30 years, his behavior with women, the accusations about all the other crazy stuff, the stuff we know about that's in testimony, my guess would be, my feeling, based on what I know, is he signed off on it because he didn't want people seeing what he was doing. And whatever he was up to, it's probably unacceptable to the normal people, to the general population.
Now, okay, you were there every day, and you had a lot of experience with Monica Lewinsky.
I did.
Describe, was this like a naive kid? She was 20 years old, right?
She was 21, I think, when she started working there. I think she was roughly 22 when the affair started.
Right. How old were you?
I was about 30, early 30s.
Okay, early 30s. Now, would you have considered you as a 30-year-old guy, the mid-30s, and this 21-year-old kid, if you were single at the time, would you have said, "Hey, you know what? Let me hit on this kid. Let me try and get a date with her"?
No, I would not. First of all, one thing you learn about being in the Secret Service, and a lot of guys forget this and they end up doing it anyway, but there's an old saying, "Don't crap on the kitchen counter." So, I wouldn't. If I was single at the time I was dating, I wouldn't be dating anybody that I was working with, worked around or worked in the West Wing, because that can come back and blow up in your face.
Especially someone who was working for free as an intern and a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But President Clinton at the time was at least in his 40s, in his mid to late 40s to 50, and she was a 21 or 22-year-old intern. Yep. Okay.
Now, what about other women?
Sure. I actually ended up having to testify about some of them. One of them was Eleanor Mondale.
Yeah, right.
Who was a reporter and actually the daughter of former candidate Walter Mondale. And I feel bad about having to write about her, but I did have to testify about it. And the reason I feel bad now, she passed away. But the effects of what happened are still the same, which is one day I was walking from the East Wing to the West Wing in the White House, and going back to my post, and I stopped to talk to one of my coworkers on the ground floor of the White House, and his post is right outside the map room. And the map room is a pretty historical, famous room that they became really famous during the Second World War, where they put maps. Anyway, a Navy steward shows up while we're standing there talking, and he goes to walk into the map room to bring President Clinton a clean shirt. And when he opened the door, he was looking back at us in the hallway, and we were looking at him. And when he opened the door, there was the president standing there with Eleanor Mondale in front of the map room table, making out like high school seniors, and they didn't even look up. And the steward, he was looking at us. When he looked into the room and realized what's going on, he got all embarrassed. He closed the door and took off running. And then, myself and the agent and then my coworker, the other UD officer, we just kind of looked at each other and said, "Oh, here we go again." And it was just another day at the White House.
And you broke up a little bit there. You said that she's passed away now. She's dead?
Yeah, Eleanor Mondale, unfortunately, succumbed to cancer, I believe.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a shame, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay. What do you make of this whole business with the FBI, with the email scandals? One question, let me back up a bit. I remember reading something about Bill Clinton saying to Monica Lewinsky that he was afraid that their phone calls were being recorded by the Israeli Mossad. What do you make of that statement?
I don't know. I do remember something like that. They did show signs of paranoia at times. I'm no psychologist, but I consider myself an excellent observer. And there were different stories that I talk about in my book, Crisis of Character, where the president and even the vice president and some of the senior staff exhibit this ideal that somebody was listening to either the Bush administration or somebody else. So it does not surprise me at all that that statement was made.
You're saying that the Clintons thought that the Bushes were listening in on them?
Yeah, when they first got elected, one of the first things before they got there, maybe not quite 3 years, probably 2 years, the Bush administration replaced the entire phone system at the White House. And you can imagine there are many, many telephones at the White House complex. The old executive office building, the White House itself, the Treasury Department on the east side. Anyway, they replaced it with this. At the time, it was AT&T's state-of-the-art system. I think it was actually called the Merlin system. But anyway, when the Clintons got in there, one of the first things they did is they decided, and I know this firsthand because I knew the AT&T technicians that had to install this equipment and maintain it. We used to see them all the time. They had special passes that allowed them to go to certain areas. We had to escort them. So I know this to be fact that they were told that the Clintons wanted to replace the phone system because they thought the Bushes, because they installed it, that there was some kind of listening system. That they were paranoid about their phone calls being listened in. So, which was ridiculous. And but here's the thing: they ordered it done and didn't even think about how to pay for it. Like they went all these big government programs, but they don't follow any of the rules. So they installed the system, AT&T, they get it all installed, and then they ask for payment, and they're like, "What do you mean pay for it?" They had the money for it, and it was crazy.
So the Clintons actually thought that the Bushes were wiretapping their phones inside the White House.
Yeah, the Bushes and the Republican Party, but absolutely, that's what the technicians said. They were paranoid about it. And after working there a while with them, I have no problem believing it.
Okay, I'd say that's pretty good. So then, what do you make of then? What do you think her motive was for having this private email server in her basement and this kind of stuff?
Well, two things. One, she wanted the ability to control what gets out to the public.
Right.
Two, she wanted the ability to delete anything she wanted at any time and destroy it without anybody knowing. And listen, nobody that works for the government, especially somebody who, again, this is an example of the people that support her say, "Oh, she's so smart and she's so great and she's a great leader." She is. The federal government doesn't understand that you cannot use the server outside the system, the government system. And one of her statements, one of her many statements and lies about it was she tried to say at one point, well, she wanted to use her own server because the government system was so slow. So if you're this great leader, fix the government system that's slow. improve the computer servers and the email system and get it working the way it's supposed to be. But no, what does she do? She sets up her own server. She lies about it. She lies about lying about it. She blames it on other people, and then when she gets caught doing it, they keep lying. Everybody else did it. Well, no, not everybody else did do it. And the other secretaries of state did it. No, they didn't. And then it was somebody else's fault. And then eventually, as we saw yesterday or the day before, the FBI director named 5 times that she lied. And now he's testifying about how she lied to Congress as we speak. There's nothing that they get involved in that she is not willing to lie about. That's been my experience. And if your listeners are nice enough to read my book and do a little studying, no matter how young they are, you'll see that this continuous circle of scandal, lying about it, deflecting it, and blaming other people is just the way they do business.
Just recently, it came out this week, I think it was Uma Abedin said that daily Hillary Clinton would take her calendar, her schedule for the day, and put it in a State Department burn bag to be burned. Did you ever see anything like that?
Yes, there is a process. I saw this at the White House. Now, I didn't work at the State Department, but there was a process at the White House. And Mrs. Clinton, when he used it, when she was there, or had the opportunity to use it, where around the West Wing and the working spaces, there's these burn bags. They look like big paper trash bags you might clean your yard up with in the winter or the fall.
Right.
And they have an orange stripe on them, and it says classified or something on there. And every day, twice a day, a uniform division officer goes around, collects these burn bags, staples them closed, and then takes them over to the incinerator, and they're burned. So that is a process.
Okay. I also had Sally Miller on the show. She was one of Clinton's mistresses way back when she came out in the Troopergate
What was her name?
Sally Miller.
Oh, sure. I remember her stories, and yeah.
Yeah, the beauty queen.
Yeah.
Now, she said to me a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, she came on my show. It was the first interview she did in 20 years. Now, she came on the show, and she said that they were both drug users. Any indication of that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
She said that they were both drug users, cocaine, marijuana, that kind of stuff. Did you see any indication of that?
Right. Now, I never witnessed any of that, but I did see something years ago, and actually we edited it out of the book eventually, just because for space. But years ago, when he first got elected, he had this brother. He has a brother named Roger.
Right.
You may have seen or two. So some news goes to this nightclub where Roger's in this band. You know, people, and Roger gets a few drinks, and the reporter asked Roger, does his brother use drugs and cocaine? And he said, the only thing my brother wants stored up is the white line on the side of the road. Now, I saw this on TV one time and never saw it again. But, other than that, I never saw any evidence of drug use by Mr. and Mrs. Clinton. There was some issues with drug use of some of the younger staff people, and that got straightened out pretty quick.
Yeah, people should note, too, that Roger Clinton was actually convicted of possession with intent to distribute a pretty large amount of cocaine, and he was pardoned by his brother. Okay.
Yeah,
now,
that's it.
What about Hillary now? She has a reputation of being she can drink you under the table.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with that either.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen her drink anything you come to think of. So I don't really have any. It's not like I socialize with them, and even all the events I ever worked for them. Like I never saw her personally. I never remember taking a drink. Me personally, I never saw it.
Okay, well, there you go. That goes a lot to your credibility. That when you haven't seen it, you come right out and say, "Listen, I haven't seen it."
Sure.
What about the hot sauce, the famous hot sauce? She claims she carries in her purse all the time. Have you seen that?
No, I have not. I did hear the story, but I've never.
Okay. Boy, the audio is so bad. They should have. Maybe they can have a congressional hearing to see to get to the bottom of this hot sauce claim.
Yeah, well, don't hold your breath.
No. Oh, okay. Now the FBI investigated the Clintons with the email server and stuff like that, and this is pretty. I think everyone's finding this hard to stomach that they would come back without an indictment, considering that there's just the recklessness was just so flagrant, knowingly with the server in the basement.
So this plays into my book. There's two sets of rules. There's the rules for you and me, and then there's the rules for the Clinton machine. It's wrong. It's obvious, and everybody seems to tiptoe around it, and it's incredible.
Do you think that at this stage that they have that kind of power to intimidate the director of the FBI into not indicting?
Yeah. Do I think it's possible? I do think it's possible. Really going on now. I will tell you. I mean, even if it's not true this time, how do we get to this point? If you look at all the stuff, I talked about the intimidation they tried to put on one of my coworkers when we were testifying in the Lewinsky scandal. Look at all the stories about intimidation from Arkansas. And, when they first came off of Arkansas, everybody said, oh, that's just tabloid. It's not true. Everything that happened down there that we heard about eventually ended up becoming true. And then some. It's just insane. You just can't make it up. And I have no idea why they have this Teflon skin ability, but they do. Nothing seems to stick to them.
Can you give us any tidbits that maybe haven't been in the news that people wouldn't be familiar with regarding the Lewinsky situation?
Let's see. Yeah, I'm sure I can. Let's see. Stuff about Lewinsky. Well, I talked about having been forced to testify against them. I will tell you, this might be interesting, and you'll certainly understand this having your background. So one of the things once we were subpoenaed to testify was we were all government employees, the Secret Service, the attorneys. So there was no attorney-client privilege, which basically eventually came to the conclusion that of the things we saw during this investigation, that every day after dinner, all these lawyers got together pretty much, and were eating at the same steakhouse. They were passing information back and forth, and that's certainly what I believe, and but I came to the conclusion towards the end of the investigation.
Hold on. You're saying that you believe that the Monica Lewinsky investigation and all that Ken Starr investigation was pretty much an old boys backroom kind of a...
Yeah, experienced what I saw towards the end, and things that happened, and information that all of a sudden certain people knew about. It led me to believe the attorneys that were presenting up were passing information to the Starr investigation. I certainly believe that. I can't prove it, but it's what I experienced over that long period of time.
You're not the only. Yeah, you're not alone in that conclusion. In the guests that I've had on the show, what do you make of Ken Starr now being involved, being one of Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys, his defense attorney?
I think it's just a strange bedfellow type thing. It's so bizarre just to think about it. So, but I will tell you, Judge Starr is, he's a good attorney. So. It is what it is. Listen, I'm actually running out of time. I have to do another show, so I'm going to have to sign off here.
Okay, one quick question, okay? I have a document here that came up in the Vince Foster investigation, and it's from an FBI agent named Jim Clemente, and it's a document about child abduction and serial killer unit, questions for a suicide expert, Vince Foster death investigation. Why would there be questions about child abduction and serial killers in the Vince Foster investigation?
I have no idea. I have no I have no information on that. That's the first for me.
Okay, Mr. Byrne, thank you so much. I hope I can beg you to come back one time and fill in some more information for us. Gary Byrne, Crisis of Character. It's available on the Opperman Report website and also on Amazon.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that's interesting stuff. I think the audio was horrible. But I think we got a lot of great information out of Gary Byrne there. I think that other people haven't asked him. I think the headline, the breaking news, is the Clintons thought that the Bushes were tapping their phones inside the White House. What the hell's going on there? By the way, too, we had him booked for 1 hour, but then it turns out that his scheduler only had him for 15 minutes. So he gave us a great amount of additional time there as far as what his schedule was today. Great information there, though. Eleanor Mondale, by the way, the daughter of Walter Mondale, I was familiar with the allegations that she was having an affair with Clinton. And at that same time, so it's also been alleged that she was having an affair with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So she was quite the got around the town, the socialite, you might say. Okay, let's see. Anything else here? A lot of information came out here with our friend here, Gary Byrne. I'm very happy with this interview. So I will be interviewing shortly Patrick Knowlton, who's the eyewitness who found the Vince Foster body. Then we're going to have William Ramsey come on and give his comments. As you may or may not know, he has a lot of personal knowledge about the Vince Foster case. Let's see, what else? This document that just came out, a letter from Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr, and the attorneys for, and Jerry Lefcourt, okay, my old buddy. That came out, Jerry Lefcourt, you might not know, was the attorney for Yippies back in the 80s. He was the attorney for Abby Hoffman when he had that coke case. But they just released a letter that the Jerry Lefcourt and Alan Dershowitz wrote to the prosecutor in their plea negotiations for Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted pedophile, that Jeffrey Epstein, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, was also pivotal in founding the Clinton Foundation. So, as you can see, these scandals just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. You heard Gary Byrne describe how much is involved in someone under Secret Service protection to opt out. You have to sign a legal document saying, I'm opting out of Secret Service protection. And we know for a fact that former President Bill Clinton did that 4 times in order to fly on a private plane with a convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. So these are all very, very interesting tidbits of information. If you enjoyed today's show, please check out OppermanReport.com because we have more shows like this. You could sign up, you could become a member, and it helps support the free shows that we put on Friday nights and Saturday nights. And it also, too, you get exclusive content. These documents we discussed earlier, you get these documents and you get, access to exclusive shows that are recorded and approved and interviews that are only for the members, only for members in the members section. So today we had former retired Secret Service agent Gary Byrne. He's the author of Crisis of Character. A White House Secret Service officer discloses his first-hand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. And you might have seen Gary's in great demand. We're lucky to get him. He's on Fox News almost every night this week. And, all the mainstream media, Drudge Report. And now he's finally made it to the Opperman Report. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And I'll play these ads. We'll come back a little bit. I didn't play any ads while we had Gary Byrne on the line because I didn't want to waste any time. This is your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. And if you're enjoying this show right now, there's more. You can get more. You can go to the Ed Opperman YouTube channel, and you could subscribe there. And we have archives of all of our past shows for over the past 3 years, about 200, 300 shows. You can also go to the Opperman Report Spreaker channel, and you could follow us there. Again, a ton of shows, about 300 shows on there. And whenever we do an impromptu show, an emergency-type broadcast that we do during the week occasionally, you'll get an email notifying you of breaking news and spontaneous broadcasts that we may do during the week. You can also go to OppermanReport.com and become a member. If you become a member, you help support the free archives on Spreaker and YouTube, and you help support the free shows on Friday evening and on Saturday evening. Each of these shows, Friday evening and Saturday evening, are carried for free on 7 internet stations, okay? So you help support that, but also, too, at OppermanReport.com in the members section, we have exclusive content. Shows that are recorded during the week that are only available to members. So please check out OppermanReport.com and help support the show.
The son of a Polish immigrant who grew up in a Brooklyn tenement, Bernie Sanders. He went to public schools, then college, where the work of his life began, fighting injustice and inequality, speaking truth to power. Bernie moved to Vermont, won election and praise as one of America's best mayors. In Congress, Bernie stood up for working families and for principle, opposing the Iraq War, supporting veterans. Now he's taking on Wall Street and a corrupt political system that holds up a rigged economy. Bernie's campaign is funded by over 1 million small contributions from people like you. He's fighting for living wages, equal pay, and tuition-free public colleges. Bernie Sanders.
People are sick and tired of establishment politics, and they want real change.
Bernie Sanders. Husband, father, grandfather, an honest leader, building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
Check out strawmanmusic.com. Sean Duff is our webmaster here at the Opperman Report, and he's a very talented musician. He's part of a band called Strawman. They're based up there in Canada. Don't hold that against them. These are like-minded folks. If you like the shows you hear on the Opperman Report, you'll like the music that they have over at strawmanmusic.com.
Enough is enough. Wall Street's greed and illegal behavior drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the 1930s. And then, after getting a huge taxpayer bailout because they were too big to fail, it turns out that 3 out of the 4 largest banks are bigger today than they were before we bailed them out. That's crazy. I'm Bernie Sanders. My plan: break up the big banks who are strangling our economy and make them pay their fair share of taxes. Then we can invest in the middle class, expand Social Security, and provide universal college education. I'll rein in Wall Street behavior so they can't crash our economy again. Will they like me? No. Will they begin to play by the rules if I'm president? You better believe it. I'm Bernie Sanders, Democratic candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
You know, you can get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, if you go to my website, emailrevealer.com. Now, this is a limited edition book, okay? And you can get a signed copy of this book, and it'll be personally autographed to you or whoever you want to give the book to as a gift. Once you have my signature on that book, you can copy the signature and put it on checks and pass them all over the world. Emailrevealer.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator.
He's fought injustice and inequality his whole life. Bernie Sanders. As a college student, he was arrested for challenging segregated housing. Bernie marched with Dr. King and thousands of others for civil rights. In Congress, Bernie stood up for working families on health care and jobs. Now he's taking on Wall Street banks and a corrupt political system that keeps in place a rigged economy. Bernie Sanders, a reformer who believes in ending racial profiling and mass incarceration so the justice system works for everyone. Bernie Sanders.
There is no president who will fight harder to end institutional racism and reform our broken criminal justice system.
Bernie Sanders, an honest leader building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We just spent the past 45 minutes with Gary Byrne, retired Secret Service agent, author of the book Crisis of Character. A White House Secret Service officer discloses his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. A lot of great information came out there. Oops, I just screwed up. Want to promote William Ramsey, producer of the Opperman Report, and part of this group, Occult Investigations, just released the new book, Children of the Beast, Abomination and Prophet of Evil. And it's about all the people that were influenced by Aleister Crowley throughout history and more recently. As you might know, William's written some great books about the West Memphis 3 and about 9/11. Incredible work, incredible information. So now his new book just came out, Abomination. Oh no, the old book was Abomination, Devil Worship, and Deception in the West Memphis 3 Murders. But this newest one is all about Crowley directly. Also, too, I want to support my friend Dave Miller, who is the head of Adventures in Life Ministry, who is going down to Mexico now to distribute these water filters. So it's AILministry.org, or you can go to Facebook, Adventures in Life Ministry, and find out Dave Miller and help support their work they're doing down there in Oaxaca, Mexico. Working on that film about Hank Harrison, and I'm going to be I have to hire an assistant who knows a little bit more about filmmaking and editing and putting all that together for me. I need to spend a couple of days solid working on that. I'm going to need to hire an assistant for that. So I'm going to be updating the GoFundMe Opperman report about the film equipment. I'm going to update that for a couple of days work, to hire an assistant to come in here and help me with that, to get all that going, because I know I've been very lax in getting that completed. So if you're interested in seeing that work on a Hank Harrison, the father of Courtney Love, check out Opperman Report. A GoFundMe/Opperman Report, and see if you can make a little donation there to help that cause go in there. I'm going to work on that this week. Got a lot going on. Oh, by the way, too, I've taken over the reins at awakeradio.us. Awake Radio was a station that was founded by Granada Steve in the UK many years ago. And it's had its highs and it's had its lows. We lost Steve, about 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, I'd say. He passed away. He had really bad, what's that thing called? CPD or OPD? The thing where you can't breathe, you know? And he was down to like 70 pounds, the poor man. But he's still, in the last days, he was working all the time. And this was his child. Awake Radio was his child, his creation. And so we had really bad trouble the past week where we ran out of funds and ran out of hosts and ran out of labor. And I've stepped up, and it was requested that I take over and manage the station. And we're bringing on a whole bunch of new hosts. I have at least 5 on the line right now. Nick Drago, Dylan Wade, Chuck Ocelli from the Ocelli Effect. My daughter, Vic, is going to come back with a show. You might remember her old Teen Truth. So we got a lot of new hosts coming up, about 5 or 6 lined up, and we'll be bringing them on the air over there and hope to rebuild that station and bring it back in honor of Granada Steve. Listen, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.